We are living in a time where everybody needs a word, including the preacher. We're hearing from everybody. We're hearing from the president, and I don't mean that negatively. We're hearing from the House Speaker. We're hearing from the governor, from the mayor. We're hearing from school districts. We're hearing from news pundits and commentators. We're hearing from all of those. But at the end of the day, if we gonna make it, the word I need to hear is from the Lord. Because if I don't hear from him, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what. Hey, let's make a choir all over the nation, wherever you are, and just sing it. We need to hear from you. We need a word from you. If we don't hear from you, what will we do? Wanting you more each day to show us your perfect way. There is no other way that we can live. Can you say it with me? Come on. We need to hear from you. We need a word from you. If we don't hear from you, what will we do? Wanting you more each day to show us your perfect way, because there is no other way that we can. Listen, singing reminded me, let's be in prayer. Got the shocking news a few days ago about the death of one of our sweet saints, was part of our music ministry, Sister Coretta Pelsey. Just an amazing story that I'll talk more about in preaching. Her funeral, that life celebration, is going to be Saturday at 11 a.m. That's actually Coretta's birthday. We know that we all won't be able to get in the sanctuary, but it will stream, of course, on our website, on Facebook as well. Lift up her children, her two sons. Lift up Kevin and Terry and her entire family, that the Lord would bring them comfort during this season. Hey, take your Bible or take your iPad, take your tablet, go to the Old Testament book of Exodus. Exodus. Hope you're praying for your bishop. I'm anxiously awaiting this surgery. It's getting harder and harder to walk, but because they don't want to chance having to delay the surgery, they're not giving me any shots or anything, so I'm having to just live with it. And so y'all pray for me. That surgery is scheduled next month. It's scheduled next month, so y'all continue to pray for my healing. I can't forget this. Lord have mercy. When is the 14th? What day is that? That's Thursday. Tuesday. Everybody thinks July 15th is the important date because the president extended IRS filing to the 15th. That ain't the important day. The important day in July happens Tuesday. That's July the 14th. Because on July the 14th, my mother and the mother of our church celebrates her 92nd birthday. Yeah, everybody clapping all over the place. 92 years young and still going strong. So y'all shout out Lady Estelle and let her know you love her. And we gonna have a quarantine party. Keep y'all in mind on Tuesday, but we celebrate that as well. Come on, Exodus chapter 14. And I'm going to begin reading at verse 10. Exodus chapter 14, verse 10. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Did we not say to you in Egypt, 'Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in this desert." Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm." I love the way the King James puts that. "Stand still, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring to you. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them, and I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel throughout the night. The cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other side, so neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord took down the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. I think I'll stop right there. I want to teach this morning, preach with this thought in our minds: you had to go through it. You had to go through it. Recently, I read a very alarming, and really not alarming, I guess, article in an edition online of USA Today, listen, that suggested that 78% of all American adults are under stress. The Gallup poll went into deeper analytics, and they surmised that 14 million adults are under stress, listen, and are on the verge of having an anxiety attack or a nervous breakdown. They went deeper into the analytics and discovered that the leading group in this depressed state were those between the ages of 30 and 49. How old are you? When they did a diagnostic of their survey, they found out that 1 out of 5 people are at a place of unhealthy stress. The thing about stress, the article said, is that it is no longer an individual problem, but it flows from being an individual problem into being a communal problem. In other words, it seeps over into your family life, from there into your community of friends, from there into your congregation of faith. And when people find themselves under the gun of anxiety and stress, it often leads to discouragement and depression. When it leads to depression, one author says that depression is the seed that gives birth to the children by the name of rage, anger, alcoholism, addiction, suicide, and hopelessness. Somebody listening to me right now is sitting on a keg of dynamite, and nobody may know it, ready to explode, because you are going through so much stress that has produced emotions that you have not dealt with. I mean, y'all, it's one thing to be at a place where you can anticipate what's coming. But what happens when you have done everything you were raised and educated to do, and things still blow up in your face? What happens when you plan, save, and invest, but out of nowhere it's gone? What happens when you tithe and you're still broke? What happens when you help other people, but now that you're the one in need, nobody seems to want to help you? What happens when you go through all of your mail and every day you get nothing but more depressing news about deadlines you can't even meet? Then on top of that, you wake up every morning with pain because you have to go to a job that doesn't appreciate you and undervalues you, but overworks you, and then has an attitude with you when you've got to take care of your family. And don't get it wrong, don't get it twisted. It's not that I don't love God, it's not that I don't have faith, but when I look at my life, I'm getting a little confused at who God is, because I can't quite come to grips with how I'm struggling like this while I'm trying to be faithful. And then you got the nerve to want to tell me that I ought to walk around saying I'm blessed and highly favored when I've got an eviction notice, a disconnect notice, nobody paying child support, couldn't get in the school of my choice, cannot pay my bills. Then on top of that, I've got to live in a pandemic in the current state of affairs, where I can't leave my house, where I've got to be scared that the very air I breathe might make me sick and die. I've got to deal with a virus they can't control, a governor who's out of control, a mayor who never had control, a president who lets ignorance control, racists who let guns control, racists who let hate control, streets that let drugs control. It's no wonder that we're like Curtis Blow. I'm close to the edge. Sometimes it's like a jungle. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under, because life can get so stressful that you don't know what to do. And then you got the nerve to want to look at me like I ought not be crying, I ought not be screaming, I ought not be cussing, I ought not be drinking. Yeah, I ought not be smoking, because you know it's legal here. I ought not be smoking. What do you do when you are at your wits' end and see no way out? That's where the children of Israel find themselves in this text. God had set them up. He came to them through a man, an ebony emancipator, a liberating lawgiver by the name of Moses, and told them that he had heard their cries. God had heard their cries and had come to deliver them. And they said, Mo, if that's what you say, we're going with you. If that's what God told you, then we're packing up and making our way. Pharaoh wasn't having it. Y'all know the story. God sends these plagues. Pharaoh decides, I'm going to let these people go. But by the time of our text, Pharaoh has changed his mind, because it is always the mindset of the oppressor to keep you under oppression. That's why they want to cancel Obamacare. That's why they don't want to give returning offenders the right to vote. That's why we voted to give them the right to vote, but then we have a bigoted governor who tries to snatch it away from them, because the oppressor always has the mind to keep you in oppression. Here's what the children of Israel missed. Pharaoh, this is real deep. Pharaoh did not let them go because he had a change of mind as it relates to having a newfound belief in equality, freedom, and liberation. Pharaoh didn't let them go because all of a sudden he didn't believe in slavery. Lord have mercy. Pharaoh only let them go because he felt like he was backed into a corner by God and given no choice. It's really a microcosmic picture of America's past and America's present, isn't it? We're in the midst of a debate now being led by this president about statues that they don't want messed with, about names on schools they don't want taken down, declaring that we are messing with their history, redacting the reality of history, that all of these people like Andrew Jackson and Robert E. Lee and Abraham Lincoln were the great heroes of our history, but they were just like Pharaoh. Those founding fathers, even that president that signed that Emancipation Proclamation, they were all just like Pharaoh. They were talking liberation while keeping slaves. They were talking letting folk go while holding on to the black folk that they had enslaved. It's no different in this day than it was in that day. They are on their way out, the text says. And as they were making their way to their place of deliverance, somebody in the camp made the mistake of looking back. And when they look back, they see that what they got delivered from is not only behind them, but coming up fast on them. Verse 11 says, I'm coming to where I want to go. That they said to Moses, did you bring us all the way out here just to kill us? If we were going to die, we could have died where we were. They were making one calculated mistake in their assessment. They are viewing their circumstance without reference to the fact that the Lord himself had brought them to this place. Now, I know what somebody's already saying. Somebody's already saying that's the messed up part, that God would bring them out only to set them up. That's the messed up part, that God would deliver them only to put them in a difficulty. But you missing the point, beloved. When I make the reason reference for where I am, God bringing me to where I am, and when I look at where I am and compare it to where I've been, brought you to where you are. When you look at where you are compared to where you used to be, you've got to know God didn't bring you out to let you die where you are right now. The old church used to put it this way: I don't believe he brought me this far just to leave me, baby. When you know who God is, and when you know who you are, and when you know who you are to God, then every now and then you've got to remind yourself that God would not bring you this far to leave you. And that's my word to us, even as a people. It's rough right now. We're dealing with an oppressive, systematic racism. We're dealing with an of a person, but my word to us as a people is God didn't bring us out